Ladies and gentlemen, Geri Petito.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is it really true? Is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geri Petito Show. Everyone and anyone who knows me knows I am the author of I'm Not an Addict, I'm Just an Ass. I'd rather be a smart ass than a dumbass. Because, guys, 33 years ago, I was a dumbass. But today, 33 years later, through the grace of God, I can honestly say now I'm a smart ass. Yes, the word ass is in the Bible at least 40 times, and it means donkey. And that's what I was. I'm saying all that to say this. You know, there are a lot of people out there struggling, even with health issues. I'm a nutritional health coach. I'm a recovery coach. All my services to you are free. Please, please reach out. If you think my book can help someone, because I sure do, you can go right to Simon & Schuster's bookstore, Archway Publishing, BAM, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to my website, www.geripetito.com. Please subscribe to the Geri Petito Show YouTube channel. And guys, listen, if you truly, truly, truly can't afford my book, please, please reach out to me about that as well. I'm here to help you. Before I introduce my incredible guests, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of my sponsors today. First, I've got Paula Ann from Ablaze Entertainment and Freedom Rings Festival, helping survivors of human trafficking to live a life of normalcy. And the Geri Petito Show is also one of their sponsors, www.freedomringsfestival.com. Then I've got John Bishop, a.k.a. Johnny B., singer-songwriter, host of the Entertainment Luncheon South, a nonprofit network created for the creative. He's also the partner in the Joey D. and Johnny B. Rock and Oldies Band. I want to give a shout-out to him and his wife, Linny, because they put this luncheon on once a month. It's by invite only, and it's $20. You get a great lunch and you get incredible entertainment. Entertainers have flown in to be here, but they don't keep a penny of it, okay? They do so much to help so many people, and they keep us all out there. They promote us like no one else does, so I want to thank them. So now, guys, I want to introduce my incredible guest, Mark Enslin. Say hello to everyone.
Hello there, everyone.
So, Mark, tell everyone about you, please.
Okay. Name's Mark Enslin. I live in Urbana, Illinois, and I describe myself as a composer, teacher, activist. I've studied music composition. I've done a lot of theater. I teach theater at the University of Illinois
Okay.
and helped start performance group that was called Performers Workshop Ensemble. It was a project-oriented experimental theater music group, and that group started an education project about 30 years ago called School for Designing a Society. And that project continues today. It was explicitly an experiment in education and connecting education with social change and our wishes and desires for change of all kinds. So that's basically who I am and what I'm doing.
So, okay, so that's really cool, but let's go into a little more detail about it. Well, I want to let everybody know. First of all, I got to thank this guy here because I got to do an incredible interview with the one and only real Patch Adams from the movie, remember? Okay, Robin Williams played him. The doctor with the clown noses and all that. That's how everyone remembers him. And I got to interview him recently, so thank you, Mark.
You're so welcome.
So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about like this school.
Yeah, it came out of a group of people who had been working together for about 15 years before we formally started it as a school. And we were mostly students um, in the arts. There were a few people who were our mentors, Mariana Brun and Herbert Brun, composition professor at University of Illinois, and someone who directed in residence living learning program at one of the dormitories. Um, and as students, we were inspired by each other and our mentors, 70s, 80s, to think about what we were studying and creating in relation to what we saw in the world that needed changing. And so we were encouraged and encouraged each other to think that there could be a connection between this piece of music that I'm writing or theater play that I'm writing and the anti-apartheid movement or the movement against nuclear proliferation. And there would be campus activism that we would take part in, various student groups doing protests. There was a shanty town on the quadrangle of University of Illinois that was a protest of apartheid in South Africa. So we would take part in these events, and most of what we encountered logically was there's this terrible thing going on in the world that we are opposing, and we're going to organize against it. So there's a lot of focus on what we don't like, what we wish to change. As we were, as a group, working together and being part of these protests, we were thinking, what seems to be missing is a place where people can talk about, okay, what if apartheid is ended in South Africa? What if we succeed in dropping nuclear weapons? What do we want instead? And so the idea for the school was to make a space where people could really prompt each other to talk about what we'd like to see. So it was a school project based on our desires rather than on learning what the past has been. Now, the past informs us, but our main focus was to try to figure out a way that creativity and careful listening to each other could bring forth some visions for what we want to work towards.
So so the school does exist?
It exists.
Okay,
Yeah.
how big is it and where exactly is it?
Well, right now, when we have sessions that are meeting in person, there is a house in Urbana where Patch Adams and Susan Parenti live.
Yep.
And, for the past, I don't know, 10 years or so, that has been a location where we would have classes, meetings, performances. And then in summers, we would go to the Gesundheit Institute, which is where Patch has been working to build a free hospital for the past 40 years. And so pretty much it's those two locations. In parts of our 30-year history, we've been, we would go to Sioux Falls and have a summer session there. We went to Atlanta in an alternative school building there. So the location moves around, but primarily that's where we are. And then also there's an online component that we started during the pandemic that continues.
So, okay, the institute that the Gesundheit, say it for me again. I always say it.
Gesundheit, like when you sneeze. Gesundheit.
Yes,
Institute.
Gesundheit Institute. So, how big is that?
That's a project, like the land that they have in West Virginia
Yes.
is 210 acres, I believe.
Okay.
It's got waterfalls, it's in the mountains, there's springs, a lot of it is wooded and, left to be untouched. And then there's, 4 or 5 buildings,
Okay.
and half-finished buildings and things in progress.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So now, as far as the entertainment, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting that you say entertainment because that's kind of the basic framework for the arts that we've grown up with in the United States. And a lot of people, when they decide early on, let's say, I want to be an artist, entertainment may not be the first thought. It may be, I want to make a statement. how do I do this statement and where is it going to function? So that was a lot of our discussions in studying music and theater in the university, was not how are we going to entertain people. Maybe entertainment has a place in keeping someone from wanting to just flee, but um, entertainment is kind of within brackets rather than being bracketed by
Right.
the industry.
Right. That's so cool how you describe all that. I'm an artist and I went to art school in 79 in New York, School of Visual Arts.
Uh-huh.
And my mindset is similar to what you've been saying, so it's so funny. I've never heard anyone describe it like that. That was pretty cool. Thank you. So,
And I encountered someone one time who was uh, in the pop music field, and I described our experimental performance group, and he said, "Oh, I got to hand it to you, trying to market something like that." And
I love it.
but it's different ways of thinking and sort of analogies.
So give us a little example of what might go on at a typical day with some people at the Institute.
Well, I want to kind of differentiate. When you say institute, it sounds to me like you're
No,
talking about
right.
our
Okay.
school, our school
Your
project.
school, your school.
And it might be, this summer we had 10 people. At the most, it's maybe been 30, some 25, maybe even fewer. And a typical day might be that we make breakfast together.
Okay.
And, we're maybe in a sort of living together situation. When we're in Urbana, people might live in a couple of different houses and then we converge. And then we'll have some kind of formal presentation morning session where there might be some concepts discussed, like alternative ways of thinking about hierarchy, let's say. And you think, well, that's a kind of an abstract idea, but it's also, if you've been living in a hierarchical situation, it's also very concrete. And sometimes it's welcome and sometimes it's distinctly unwelcome. So, there are ideas about let's get rid of hierarchy altogether, or maybe is there another framework for making temporary hierarchies that can change? And then already that's kind of twisting the idea. So it might be a discussion that goes in that direction on such a theme like that. And then maybe we'll come up with a writing assignment or a performance assignment. People would break up into groups perhaps and maybe create a piece that questions hierarchy or takes the word hierarchy for a little tour through the different usages where it might be. Then we present that to each other and we break for lunch.
So wait, I have a question. So when you say a piece, could it be dancing? Could it be poetry? Could it be anything?
Yeah.
Any of the arts?
Any of the arts.
That's so cool.
Sculpture, drawing, puppets. Yeah.
I love that.
And, part of that perspective is thanks to the way of teaching music composition that we encountered with Herbert Brun and then also Mariana Brun, whose family was in theater in Germany. And then, both of them fled Nazi Germany. Herbert Brun specifically through music composition, work with computers, he would present the work of a composer as someone who makes something which without that person would not happen. And, as an 18-year-old, I'm encountering this idea and thinking, wait, that could include all kinds of things that are not even music. And this was exciting and expanding our notions. And so we've kind of carried on that tradition of creativity in whatever form it can take.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So I've traveled all over the world. I traveled to Russia and to Asia, China, all over Asia, but I was at the China Wall during communism. I was at the Russian Wall during communism, had machine guns pointed at me several times. I got rocks from all the walls. And I was recently at the borders in Yuma, Arizona for 5 days with my other producer here, Ruben, and we spent 5 days with Border Patrol and the Sheriff Department, and what we witnessed changed my life. But it started back when I was in my 20s. That changed my life as well in the communist countries. So you mentioned Africa. So what went on there? Like, did you go? You were talking about something that was going on with Africa back in
South
the day.
Africa. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Did you
I've
ever
never been to
visit?
South
Okay.
Africa. I know people from there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
I've gone and done theater there.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. So what else would you like to tell us? Because you've probably got so much.
Um, well, I could tell a little bit about our experience of deciding to start a school.
Yes, I would love to hear that.
Um, our background was artists. We were doing performances, in cafes, or we did a whole project of house theater, turning a house into a cabaret, kind of. Um, and mostly we were being students while doing these projects, touring around. And then, there's comes a time when you can no longer be a student, much as we tried to stretch that out. And so then it was kind of like, okay, then the course of things tends to be a dispersal. Someone gets a job here or there, career. That's the way education is kind of shunting us. And we thought, no, we actually like the educational environment, but we don't know of any place that does an environment like we had been creating within, certain enclaves in the University of Illinois. So we thought, well, what if we started a school, as if it were a composition, like a play. We would figure out some components, where it's going to be, who it's going to be for, etc. And it was all up to us because there's no rule book on how to make a school, really. Um, or at least that we were willing to honor. We read about the Bauhaus. That was kind of inspiring. It seemed to be artists who just decided, yeah, we're going to be a school. Um, and some of our first thoughts, I guess we've got to raise funds first because you need money to do a school, right? And we spent, maybe 5 or 6 years with an organization. We started a not-for-profit organization. We told each other what we would do when we started, and then found that raising funds wasn't going anywhere, and thought maybe we should start the school first and then raise the money. So we just
Okay.
kind of switched the order.
Okay.
We didn't know what we were doing, really. And, friends of ours who had experience in the alternative school world were saying, do you know what you're getting into? Running a school is, not a simple thing to do, even, small schools. And yet we decided to go ahead. And so part of it was we would put these components together and then discover what would happen. So one of the things early on was the name. School for Designing a Society is a mouthful.
Yes.
Marianne Brune taught a couple of classes in the dormitory where she was directing this artist in residence program called Designing Society.
Okay.
And that was kind of inspiring experience. So we thought, well, why don't we make that the kind of theme and name of our school? It seemed to be open-ended because nobody knows really what it takes to design a society. Can a society even be designed? That's an open question. So that was a name that we came up with. And then as we told people, yeah, we're starting a school, they would say, like, what ages? Because in our society, that's a relevant question. And we found ourselves not wanting to answer that question.
Oh, okay. I have to ask why.
Yeah, why? I think it was because the education that we were enacting in this seminar that we had was we were in a learning community. So there was a nominal professor who, directed certain things, gave assignments, but also we gave each other assignments. To be a composer is kind of giving yourself an assignment. So these kinds of things seem open-ended to us. And then I think it was partially just why do we have to specify the age?
No, but
So
but wait. I won't interrupt you. I don't like interrupting, but I have a question. Did you have children also? Did you have elderly
yeah,
adults? You know,
that is definitely a part of the story of many schools that get started is someone who's a group of parents of children that want something different for their children.
gotcha,
That was not the case for us primarily.
gotcha.
And that maybe did have a kind of a determining aspect for it. So, we said, since we wanted to create a learning community, the people we wanted to invite as students would also be teaching. Um, and, some of that was we had to modify as we tried it out, but we did try it out. And so we said on our posters, ages 14 to 94.
Gotcha.
Um, and what ended up and we put in some advertisements in a few journals like the Back Pages of the Nation and a couple of journals like that. It was this is in the 90s, so it was the early days of the internet. We had a web page up, and we had no idea who would be interested in such a weird thing. And what we found was we got people applying from Japan, from Germany,
That is so cool.
Canada, various parts of the United States, um, and a fair number of college age people, a few high school students, specifically from Puerto Rican high school in Chicago, where we'd known someone and thought, this summer program would be well for them in some way. And it turned out that, we had our first summer school at the Gesundheit Institute land in West Virginia. We were living, most of us, in Urbana, Illinois. So we had to drive 9 hours to do our summer school, which kind of was something that gave us the courage to try it. Was, okay, let's go somewhere and do that. But then as it turned out, there was an 11-year-old who happened to be on the land there and nothing else is interesting. So she showed up to our all ages school, even beyond our advertised 14 to 94. And we just told her, yeah, anytime somebody says something you don't understand, you can go ahead and ask. So there's one of the college students talking about writing his thesis. She raises her hand and say, "What the hell is a thesis?" So there was a kind of openness that we were trying out, and discovering who was interested in a thing with a name like that and a description like that. We continued to do it as a summer school in different locations. In 1997, so our first summer school was 93.
Oh,
Herbert Brune had emphysema, and so it got to be too hard for him to travel. So we decided, we've always wanted to try to switch over to a full 2-semester curriculum. So we made that change. And for a few years, we really invited people to come for 3 months at a time to Urbana, Illinois. And over those years, we kind of found who tends to be interested in such a school. One tendency was someone who's in some kind of formal education place, maybe an alternative like New College, Florida, or someplace like that, for whom that was too restrictive, and they found ours to be intriguingly more open.
gotcha.
So for them, it was kind of a pathway out of formality. And then there was kind of an opposite tendency of some people who were interested in ideas but not in academia at all. And so ours seemed loose enough, informal enough that they could stomach being part of us with our not easy conversations. But still, they felt like, well, if I can survive this thing, maybe I can try out formal education. And so some people made that pathway.
Interesting.
Another kind of tendency, which maybe has a little bit to do with your project, is that who's interested in designing society? People who are dissatisfied with the current society. And those dissatisfactions can take a lot of different shapes.
Yes.
So it can be someone who wants a big change in their life. And so we found people who would be coming in thinking, maybe this will help me make that change I want to make in my life.
Wow. That's
Uh,
amazing, Mark, what you're doing for people.
yeah, sometimes it worked out well, and sometimes not necessarily, but
I get
still,
it, but still.
yeah. And it was an education for us as well. Like, um, you know, I would get to learn over the years what recovery means for people, and the different forms that can take, and the progress and not necessarily progress, etc. That can take, but also like there was a time in which we kind of made an emphasis on teenage applications, and there was a 16-year-old from another state who arrived with parents kind of hovering, uh, saying, our teen's got ADHD, and you've got to be careful about that, and provide structure, etc. And then this teen comes out as trans in the process of our school,
Okay.
where the conversation about that identity was different than it is now, and kind of a learning process for everybody involved. Like, what's it going to mean to come out to a group of people that you're gaining trust with, and we will be discovering, making mistakes, and correcting them together. Um,
How is that young person now?
you know, in a partnership, and no longer a young person, and went on to college,
Okay,
and
good. Beautiful. Okay,
oh wow.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, wow. I mean, I'm really like impressed that you did something like this and that everyone that worked with you worked alongside of you. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you mentioned Patch. He has been a guest presenter like all along. We were kind of we considered ourselves sister projects, and our performance group up until then had been. We had a kind of a style where we were very open about conflicts with each other.
Okay.
So, uh, groups have conflicts.
Yes.
We decided to not pretend they weren't there and make them a little thematic. It maybe got a little rough. And Patch came in and said, emphasized friendship, and said to us, like, you guys should be living together in a commune. And the first time he mentioned that to us, we both, the group of us kind of looked at each other and said, I don't think so. But, we have evolved over the years in that, and realized that our 10, 15 years before that was definitely building friendships,
Yes.
and um, doing, embarking on these experiments, I guess you can call them, or trying things out, really relied on having the friends who would say, yeah, let's try that,
Mhm.
versus feeling isolated and can I risk that? Who's going to catch me if I make a mistake in doing something?
Right. So, with all these, all right, let me ask you this. So, have you worked with a lot of younger people that you've helped that have like, grown to be individuals who feel okay with themselves?
I would say, yeah.
Okay, good.
A lot of people, I could pretty honestly say that their time with us, and some people actually explicitly said, like, just this past year, I reconnected with someone who was in our 2011 session, and she said, yeah, that time with you really meant a lot to me.
Beautiful.
That was great to hear, because
Beautiful.
really know, in the education field, the kind of there's a flow through, um, and also, kind of because care, became an important criterion for how we're deciding to treat education, in all senses of the word, like caring about the way things go, caring about issues, caring about each other, health care, all the dimensions of care. Um, we could see that there would be people who would come in like isolated
Yes.
and just feel like, okay, here's some people that maybe I don't get everything that they're saying, but I do feel paid attention to in a loving way.
Yes. Beautiful.
Um,
Now, what about animals? Have you brought any animals into the mix throughout the years?
huh. um, there's different ways I can answer that
Okay.
question.
Okay.
So, as we're talking about designing society, it kind of opens our pores to different notions that people around the world have towards what's a better society. And there's this effort that goes by the name of permaculture. Um, there was a few people like uh, an Australian person, Mollison, who came up with a theory in a book and I think coined that word. A Japanese farmer who came up with different farming techniques that was trying to take insights from ecology to different ways of designing, um, shaping of nature and being in nature, um, flowing with nature rather than fighting against it, uh, seeing how organisms interact, and that would include plants and animals. Um, so that was, and there were a few people who kind of specialized in that who were part of our organizing group for a while. Um, I myself, I've personally like animals, but always felt like my life was too transient to be able to care for a pet, for
Okay.
instance. So
Okay.
um, the animals I live with are out in the yard,
Okay.
groundhog,
Okay.
squirrels, etc. Um, but also, like Susan and Patch, they have domestic and wild animals that they care for
Beautiful.
in a way that's, I think, is questionable actually. But like, do raccoons really need to be fed? But there's a relationship there, and part of the discussion of bringing animals into the question is like, what's an ethical way, what is a desirable way to behave towards animals. And so vegetarianism has been a discussion.
I'm vegan actually, so here you go.
And being as old as I am, I've been and seen people who would be vegetarian or vegan and then at different reasons decide no longer to be. And are they going to be ethical about their consumption of animals, or are they just giving up, or uh, and so yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about.
Okay.
Animals in relation to animals are part of society,
Yes.
and that's a big question. um,
I want to share something with you. I just
Please,
interviewed a
yeah.
woman. You're going to love this story because it has to do with people. So I just interviewed this woman, Rabia Seminole, and she has I'm going to just say she has like a farm. We're going to just say that word, okay? She takes in animals that were abused, okay? And from turtles to horses, okay? Some animals have two legs and they have to have wheels on them. So she's cared for a horse who was shot in the face, who has part of his face gone. Okay, so on and on. Beautiful. All right, so anyway, when I was interviewing her, she said something that just, I was like, wow. Years ago, the local police department teamed up with her, and teenagers that were going to be put in jail, like one young man shot someone. He didn't kill him, but he shot someone. And they brought these young people there to care for the animals to see if that would help them. This one particular story is this one young man, teenager, said, I don't want to be here. And she said, you don't have to be here. And he said, what? And she said, you can go with them and go to jail. You don't have to be here. And as they're talking, he's got his hand down by his side, and the horse that was shot in the face puts its mouth, thing in the kid's hand, and he turns around and he sees this horse. And he said, what happened to him? And she said, someone shot him in the face. And he said, how could anyone do that to an animal? And she said, how can anyone do that to a human? Long story short, not only did he stay, years later, they ran into each other in town. He went up to her and he said, I have to thank you and your animals. It saved my life. I never ended up in jail. So just, beautiful stuff like that, and what you're doing, helping. I mean, it's amazing because, people need help. People, come from all different walks of the world, right? And we don't know their upbringing and what's going on. So what you're doing is amazing.
That's interesting. You bring up that story too, because it highlights another kind of theme that
Okay?
came up in, it can be start off with abstract discussions about what's part of society, how to treat
Okay.
people who transgress, and the whole history of incarceration in the United States, mass incarceration, racism involved in that,
Yep.
death penalty, like the exercise of the death penalty in Missouri yesterday, and the injustices there.
Yes.
And so gradually getting to know people who have been incarcerated, who've been among our teachers, and also activism in our town, trying to be with people who are going through court processes. Susan Parenti and I did, and a couple other people did some theater workshops in our juvenile detention center. We had this theater project, and we thought, what if we did that?
Beautiful.
And they were very receptive to our being there. And, we had guards not being guards for the moment. They were taking part in the theater workshop. And what we see from things like this, and also with the clowning with Patch Adams, is that some of these institutions that have this oppressive aspect to them
Yes.
can, through these interactions like the one you described, get people to reflect differently and
Yes.
both have personal turnarounds and maybe even institutional turnarounds.
Yes. Yes, I agree 100%. I have a friend who is also a radio show host, and all she does, she's actually living with a man who was wrongfully incarcerated for years. So she does everything. All her shows are about helping these people. So it's amazing.
And even rightfully incarcerated people
You know.
are people. And
No.
what is the right way to treat someone who has actually done something terrible?
So, wow, amazing. So we have a few minutes left. Mark, what would you like to talk to everybody out there about and make them really understand or get it, or you want to share how they could get in touch with you? Anything you want to share, please do.
All right. Our website is like a little bit out of date, but not completely out of date, designingasociety.org. You can also look up patchadams.org to see what Gesundheit is doing. We're part of doing clown trips, where we offer workshops along with the clown trips to various parts of the world, where we're bringing love and connection to people who are locked up in different kinds of healthcare and other kinds of institutions. And I host a weekly Zoom that we started doing during the pandemic that we called the Wormhole. So you could email me, enslin.mark@gmail.com, if you want to see what that's about. It's pretty free form, but occasionally there's a topic or a presentation that we'll do, and that's on Saturday evenings at 5 Central Time. But also I want to share with people that what I'm describing to you is a very do-it-yourself school project. So we, in our friendships, we're just talking about what do we want to see in the world and decided to enact that. And so I would just like to say to people who are watching this, if you have some kind of aspiration for something you'd like to see happen, you can create it. You can shape it in a way where it somehow manifests your intention according to your capabilities, and both of those things will evolve together.
Thank
So
you.
we have other sister projects.
Thank you, Mark. That was amazing. Excuse me. Throat issues here.
Allergies and things.
Yeah, we're having a storm and I'm allergic to rain, believe it or not. So I want to thank you, Mark. Amazing, amazing. I want to thank all the listeners.
Thank you, Geri.
Please, please share this. All right, producer, take us out.
Ladies and gentlemen, Geri Petito.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is it really true? Is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the green